Welcome to today's edition of the Rush 24/7 podcast.
LOK just finished watching, like many people probably did, the Mitt Romney attempted takedown of Donald Trump. And once again, as loudly as they apparently are able to say it, the Republican establishment telegraphs they have absolutely no idea what is happening in this country. Just stunning to me, folks, to watch this. So many different takeaways that there are many takeaways you can have from this thing. You can analyze it just in its vacuum, and was it good? Was it bad? Did Romney succeed in making the points that he wanted to make? Then you take it out of that little bubble and you put it in context of everything, and the questions about it just overwhelm whatever substance or content there was in what Romney had to say. Anyway, greetings, my friends. It's great to have you. Rush Limbaugh here behind the golden EIB microphone. Telephone number is 800-282-2882. Email address lrushbaugh@eibnet.com. It appears to me that the establishment in Washington, both parties, still believes that whatever is happening out here that is causing people to support Donald Trump in large numbers is something temporary. That it is a fever, that it is a tantrum, that it is a child that has gone astray, and that a lecture will straighten them out. That a talking to will show them the error of their ways. And that's not what this is, as I divulged in great detail yesterday. And on many days and weeks prior, this is not temporary. It's not a phase, and it is not a tantrum. Now, Mitt Romney had some substantive things to say about Trump that, as I say, if you just look at it within the bubble of his comments, might make some sense. But it's nothing nobody else has been saying about Trump in this entire campaign. There wasn't anything new. And not one instance in the past of anybody saying any of these things about Trump has caused massive defections from Trump's campaign. So the questions then arise. Okay, if it hasn't worked prior to today, why do it today? What's the deal? And the answers to me are rather obvious. I think these establishment people still can't get it through their heads that this is real. They've expected Trump to implode. They've expected his supporters to abandon him and wake up from all this. And now that we've had Super Tuesday, and every passing day, the establishment learns that it isn't temporary, that it isn't going to go away on its own, they ratchet up their levels of panic and try to take matters into their own hands. And then you start questioning the timing and the person they decide to use to do this. And I'm not saying that Romney isn't sincere in any shape, manner, or form, but where was this months ago? There's nothing. Everything Romney said about Trump today, they have thought about Trump since this campaign began. Where was this kind of analysis of Barack Obama? Where has this kind of analysis been of Barack Obama the last 7 years? The way this is going to be heard, these guys, at some point, I don't know if they're ever going to understand this. These establishment guys, the way this is going to be heard is, why are you trying to destroy your own base over and over again? Why are you rejecting the majority of people in your own party and their expressed desires and wishes? Why are you continually ignoring and trying to thwart the will of your voters? That's how it's going to be heard. That's how it's going to be reacted to. This, if they really think, they can't think this, can they? Do they really think, take the universe of Trump supporters, and however they hear this, maybe they watched it live, maybe they'll watch it streaming on their phones, or they'll see highlights of it later on TV or whatever, but they're going to see it. Do they really think that a significant number of Trump supporters are going to go, wow, Oh, yeah. Oh, my God, I hadn't thought of that. You know, Romney's right. Okay, good. I'm finished with Trump. Okay. I admit I was wrong. Do they really think that's going to happen? It's going to be seen as the establishment once again unable to win, and therefore they're going and resorting once again to trying to talk their supporters out of the thinking that they are at present engaged in. Now, Cookie is, as we speak, working on excerpts from the Romney speech, but I want to play you a couple of sound bites. And this reason I'm playing these sound bites is not to point up any hypocrisy in Romney, although that'll happen. But the reason I want you to hear these sound bites is because these sound bites, matched against what Romney said today, are a glaring reason, one of many reasons why the Washington establishment is being rejected and not trusted and not supported. Let's go back, February 2nd, 2012 in Las Vegas, the Trump International Hotel and Tower, and Donald Trump endorsed Romney for president, February 2nd, 2012. And we have two Mitt Romney sound bites. Here's the first.
There are some things that you just can't imagine happening in your life. This is one of them. Being in Donald Trump's magnificent hotel and having his endorsement is a delight. I'm so honored and pleased to have his endorsement.
Don't think the people supporting Trump don't remember this. Don't think that they're going to hear this, either on this program or elsewhere. And they're not going to be questioning Trump. They're going to be questioning Romney. Here's the second bite. Get this.
Donald Trump has shown an extraordinary ability to understand how our economy works, to create jobs for the American people. He's done it here in Nevada. He's done it across the country. He understands that our economy is facing threats from abroad. He's one of the few people who stood up and said, you know what, China has been cheating. They've taken jobs from Americans. They haven't played fair. We have to have a president who will stand up to cheaters. So I want to say thank you to Donald Trump for his endorsement. It means a great deal to me to have the endorsement of Mr. Trump and people across this country.
Now, Trump's the same guy that he was 4 years ago, 2012. But here's Romney accepting his endorsement and praising him. Praising him on the terms Trump is using in this campaign. He is going to get back at the people cheating Americans, i.e., the Chinese. He's going to get back at the people taking jobs from Americans. Romney applauds that. Trump is campaigning on those very things. But strip away the details. The way people who have had it with the establishment are going to hear this, they're going to think it's Romney who has to explain himself, not Trump. They think Trump's being consistent. They think Trump's trustworthy. They think whatever they think about Trump, they think whatever Trump stands for, whatever Trump means, which I think is bigger than Trump. Romney's the one who seems to be in diametric opposition to himself. How do you go from lavish praise and almost acting like a groupie just to be in Trump's presence? There are some things you just can't imagine happening in your life, and this is one of them. Being in Donald Trump's magnificent hotel with Donald Trump standing right next to me, endorsing me. That's one of those wonderful things you just never expect. How do you go from that to this today? Now, I realize some of you may not have heard the Romney speech. As I say, we are feverishly assembling sound bites from it. And I'm going to get your input on this, too, because there's a lot of different takes on this. Some people think, for example, that this really, when you boil it all down, when you strip it all down, this is really not purposed as a hit piece on Trump, but rather a prelude for Romney to enter the race as a third-party candidate. But you just can't, one day out of the blue, say, you know what, I'm running for president. You have to lay the groundwork. And so some are speculating that this was a speech that lays the groundwork, i.e., establishing a purpose and a reason for Mitt Romney to enter the race as a third-party or savior candidate. Some people, no. He wouldn't have talked glowingly about Cruz and Rubio. the way he did in this speech, if that was the case. There are going to be some people, and I think you're going to be surprised. I think most people, if you watch the speech before you've heard any commentary about it, which lets all you people out if you haven't heard it. But as I say, if you just listen to the speech within its bubble, you go, yeah, that's right. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Oh, yeah. Romney's going to have a lot of people applauding this, the people already predisposed against Trump. So he's going to have a lot of supporters out there, but it isn't going to move any Trump opponents. In fact, this is the kind of thing. Here's the timing of it. And of all people, the establishment could have chosen anybody to go out there and deliver this message. Why go out and deliver? Have the message delivered by the loser in 2012, by somebody who would not take on Barack Obama. Why choose Romney? And maybe the answer, he wasn't chosen. He just did it on his own because he's fed up. There's any number of explanations here, but why not do this way back when you could save Jeb, theoretically? Why not do this for Jeb? Why not do this back in October? Trump was the same guy then as he is now, and the polling data was indicative he was going to be winning primaries. But remember, back then, the establishment thought this is all going to fade away, and you were going to grow up, you Trump supporters, you're going to wake up, you're going to grow up, you're going to realize the big mistake you're making. And once again, they've waited too long. They've been wrong in assessing why Trump supporters support Trump, why they exist, why they are animated and informed the way they are. And it still boils down to they really think they can talk him out of it. Somebody needs to show me the evidence that they can talk anybody out of it. Remember, these are the guys that want to sign on to amnesty with Obama. Mitt Romney. I don't know how many people are aware of this. This is the same Mitt Romney who told an audience just last week, folks, that Americans are so angry. He was explaining the anger in America. His theory was that Americans are angry because we're not facing the big challenges of climate change and income inequality. Just last week in a speech, we're angry. You're angry because you're mad that Washington isn't taking climate change seriously. So there's many questions here as to why Romney and why now. Now the Michigan primary is tomorrow. Romney family is still somewhat popular. Trump has a 10-point lead in Michigan. And again, I'm gonna predict to you that there will be people now demanding that Romney run after this speech. So there'll be probably a draft Romney movement out there. Third party, what have you. And then, ladies and gentlemen, the Politico. 2 stories here on this. Wall Street readies big Trump assault. Wall Street getting ready to go nuclear on Donald Trump. Terrified that the reality TV star could run away with the Republican nomination and bring his brand of anti-immigrant protectionist populism to the White House. Some top financiers are writing big checks to fund an effort to deny Trump a majority of delegates at the Republican convention. The effort is centered on the recently formed Our Principles PAC, the latest big money group airing anti-Trump ads, which is run by GOP strategist Katie Packer, deputy campaign manager for Mitt Romney in 2012. There was a conference call on Tuesday to solicit donors for the group, including Paul Singer, billionaire hedge fund founder Elliott Management, Hewlett-Packard president and CEO Meg Whitman, another severe conservative out there, and Chicago Cubs co-owner Todd Ricketts, one of Joe and Marlene Ricketts' 3 sons. The Ricketts family is heavily financially involved in an anti-Trump movement. And then the New York Times. Never Trump movement dealt setback after Super Tuesday. Alarmed by Donald J. Trump's victories in 7 states on Super Tuesday, Republicans desperate to sink his presidential bid moved on Wednesday to battle him on 2 fronts, attacking him with millions of dollars in TV ads in Florida, while girding for what would be the party's first contested convention in 40 years. And once again, can anybody, any of you, I mean, even those of you who are anti-Trump, can any of you remember anything close to this kind of energy, this kind of commitment, this kind of devotion to defeating Democrats? From either these Wall Street biggies, private sector biggies, Mitt Romney, Republican National Committee, I can't. So the Trumpists out there are once again going to think their own party is not only now ignoring them, their own party is ganging up on them. And all this talk about a brokered convention, you know, you need 1,237 delegates to win on the first ballot, to win the nomination. Now, Trump's going to go in there with a minimum 1,000, 1,100 if he doesn't win it all. Can you imagine telling 1,100 people, those delegates pledged to Trump, that it doesn't count? You don't win, and we're going to mount a big movement. You want to talk about a massive walkout of a convention? So this is how they're going to see this. I take a break here, folks. Sit tight. We'll be back and continue after this. What's that? No. Oh, no. I don't doubt Mitt Romney's sincerity at all. I think, let me remind you of things I've said in the past. I think Mitt Romney, I remember, I don't know how many times I said this back in the 2012 campaign. It ended up being very frustrating for me. Mitt Romney is one of the finest human beings walking the planet. Now, however you wish to define that, if you want to talk about morality, integrity, character, and because he has all of those characteristics, I thought he could beat Obama handily in 2012. But they drew the line. They would not go after Obama. They would, even when they were saying, Rush, we can't go after Obama personally, but we can go after his policy. Well, they didn't even do that. There was this ongoing fear of any criticism of Obama. They're going to lose the African-American vote, they're going to lose the Hispanic vote, or they're going to lose independents or whatever. I mean, you know the drill. Romney can clearly make a case. I don't doubt he meant every word of this, and I don't doubt that he's severely worried. I think he's a genuine patriot. I think he's terribly worried about what's going to happen to the country and to his party. I don't doubt that this was sincere. I don't think any of it was made up. But it's I don't want to say sad because I don't want to sound patronizing, but it is a mind-boggling thing to realize that the Republican establishment still doesn't understand what's happening here. That it's not temporary or a one-off or a tantrum or whatever, and that people are not misguided and being suckered in their own. They're committing to what Trump is. They're committing to anti-Washington. They're not going to be talked out of it. No, I think they're scared. I think the establishment is scared. Look, this is their hold on power, folks. This is their reason for existing. I think a lot of these Wall Street guys, the finance guys, they kind of like the financial arrangement the way it is now. They don't want any tariffs, trade wars. They don't want anything interrupting the current relationship with the Chi-Coms. The establishment haves, they've got theirs, and they don't want anything happening to it. I mean, there's so many moving parts in all of this to try to explain where people come down on it. But here we go now. We've got excerpts of the Romney speech, which occurred between 11:30 and 11:52 a.m. Eastern Time today. And I think, to be totally fair and in context, Mike, I want you to go back and grab audio soundbite number 20 again. And then we'll start with, this is Romney in 2012 in February in Las Vegas. Trump has just endorsed him, and Romney is thanking Trump and praising Trump. We'll go from that to Romney's speech excerpts today.
Donald Trump has shown an extraordinary ability to understand how our economy works, to create jobs for the American people. He's done it here in Nevada. He's done it across the country. He understands that our economy is facing threats from abroad. He's one of the few people who stood up and said, you know what, China has been cheating. They've taken jobs from Americans. They haven't played fair. We have to have a president who will stand up to cheaters. So I want to say thank you to Donald Trump for his endorsement. It means a great deal to me to have the endorsement of Mr. Trump and people across this country.
So that's Mitt Romney back on February 2nd, 2012. Here is Mitt Romney today. He's in Salt Lake City at the Hinckley Institute. And speaking about the 2016 presidential campaign and Donald Trump.
In 1964, just days before the presidential election, which incidentally we lost, Ronald Reagan went on national television and challenged America, saying that it was a time for choosing. He saw two paths for America, one that embraced conservative principles dedicated to lifting people out of poverty and helping create opportunity for all, and the other, an oppressive government that would lead America down a darker, less free path. I'm no Ronald Reagan, and this is a different moment in time. But I believe with all my heart and soul that we face another time for choosing, one that will have profound consequences for the Republican Party and, more importantly, for our country.
Okay, let me take the occasion here of that bite to draw the analogy, because the thing that it took me a while to learn this. When I finally became aware that the Republican Party does not like conservatives, and I learned that late in life. I didn't learn that till the 1990s. I was one of these people that thought the Republican Party was the home of conservatism and that the Republican Party embraced conservatism, and that's because of my really focused attention of the Republican Party in the 1980s. And I wasn't, during the 80s, I was working for many of those years for a baseball team, and then got back into radio in 1984. But I only knew the surface. I did not know that the underpinnings inside the Republican Party of the deep resentment of Reagan. I was in Kansas City in 76 during a convention, and I saw it there, but that was, I thought, just the result of competition between Ford, the incumbent, and the outsider Ronaldus Magnus. It wasn't until later that I really learned that there is an active dislike for conservatives in the Republican Party, and it has existed for a long time. And it's traceable to 1964 and Goldwater. You know, for the longest time I asked myself, before this all became, before I became aware of it, I asked myself, what is it? It doesn't make any sense. The last time the Republican Party enjoyed real power for 8 straight years was during Ronald Reagan. And what was the Reagan? Reagan was conservatism. Reagan was the embodiment of it. Reagan had 49 state landslide wins. Reagan had massive approval numbers. Reaganism policy worked every place it was implemented. The American people loved Reagan. There were Reagan Democrats. The Republican Party was loved. It didn't make sense to me that the Republican Party would not want more of that. But the first chance they had to get rid of anything, any Reagan residue, they took it. And I later learned that there are many reasons why, by the way, not the least of which is ideological disagreements. Moderate rhino Republicans simply don't like conservatism for many reasons, social issues being probably top of the list. But there are many other reasons. They're embarrassed of conservative-type people. They have a stereotypical image of them, they think they're deliverance. And they're our kind of people. We don't want to hang with them. It's a class thing, folks, as I was discussing in great detail recently. So whenever a conservative comes along in presidential politics on the Republican side, or whenever conservatism presents itself as something that might actually gain power within the Republican Party, they panic and they start talking about 64, not the 80s. They don't reflect back on the wondrous years of the Reagan years. They go back and think of the Goldwater landslide laws. That's what conservatism means to them. It was such a profound thing, that Goldwater landslide laws, that's what conservatism means to them. Conservatism means losing 49 states, not winning 49 states. It's the most amazing thing. And here's what they miss. Yes, Goldwater lost, but any Republican was going to lose because that was coming off the JFK assassination. Just a year earlier, a year prior to the election, there was no way any Republican was going to win that. But beyond that, Ronald Reagan's A Time for Choosing speech for Goldwater in the run-up to the election of 1964 actually paved the way for years of Republican dominance in governorships, in state houses, and at the White House for years and years and years to come. Goldwater, lost in a landslide, but that started something in motion that ended up dwarfing the Democrat Party. There was a time, you may be too young to remember, there was a time the Republican Party owned California, and it was in my lifetime. When I lived in California, governors were Republican. Republicans were in play for California electoral votes. And that was all due to Goldwater and Reagan all the way back in 1964. The conservative movement, the Republican Party, was energized and birthed, and it grew and grew. And yet here's Romney. In one of the first things that he mentions in his speech warning everybody about Trump in 1964, just days before the presidential election, which incidentally we lost, he has to point out. Doesn't point out what happened afterwards. He just talks about Reagan and his speech and Reagan's path for America, but he doesn't talk about what that path was. Conservative principles dedicated to lifting people out of poverty and helping create opportunity for all. That's scratching the surface of conservatism. Anyway, this is their attempt to make themselves out to be conservative and understand conservatism when they aren't conservative at the establishment, and they don't really like it, and they don't appreciate it. But I could not let this first bite go without talking about 64, landslide defeat. They are obsessed by it and consumed by it. And that's what they think Trump is. Forget conservative liberal. They think Trump is a landslide defeat. Now, if Trump were just going to lose closely and nobody else would care, a big deal. But a Trump landslide defeat takes them with him, they fear. And just as they have misread the importance of what happened in 1964 with Goldwater losing and the aftermath that loss created, so are they unable to grasp what is happening now and why. And the attempt to relate it to 1960, which is what they always do when there are abundant examples of conservatism succeeding wildly and being embraced by the whole nation. And they do not ever think of those days, the 80s, and they don't want to. Have to take a break. More Romney soundbites coming up, and your phone calls as well, because I know you're chomping at the bit out there to get in on it, and your time is coming. El Rushbo, the cutting edge of societal evolution. Here's more Mitt Romney from this morning in Salt Lake City.
Even though Donald Trump has offered very few specific economic plans, what little he has said is enough to know that he would be very bad for American workers and for American families. But you say, wait. Isn't he a huge business success? Doesn't he know what he's talking about? No, he isn't. And no, he doesn't. His bankruptcies have crushed small businesses and the men and women who work for them. He inherited his business. He didn't create it. And whatever happened to Trump Airlines? How about Trump University? And then there's Trump Magazine, and Trump Vodka, and Trump Steaks, and Trump Mortgage. A business genius he is not.
Well, he was 4 years ago. He was one of the most enlightened, brightest business guys there was 4 years ago. At least that's what Mitt Romney said about Trump 4 years ago. By the way, Trump has released his health care plan. The media is not covering it, but it's out there. It's 7 points, 7-point plan. Number one, get rid of the individual mandate. It's unequivocally gone. But if you review the plan, I mean, it's as far as conservatives go, there's much more to like in it than not. But we'll get to that later. Here's the next Romney bite.
I believe we can nominate a person who can win the general election and who will represent the values and policies of conservatism. Given the current delegate selection process, that means that I'd vote for Marco Rubio in Florida, and for John Kasich in Ohio, and for Ted Cruz, or whichever one of the other two contenders has the best chance of beating Mr. Trump in a given state.
So vote for different people in different states to stop Trump and deny him delegates. That's I mentioned a three-pronged strategery yesterday. One of them is everybody stays in, denying Trump 1,237 on the first ballot, and after that it's over. Then after you go through the first ballot, you're through with your pledges. So the 1,100, let's say, that Trump would have, they're free, can vote for anybody. And that's what Romney's alluding to. He wants you to go, you vote for Rubio in Florida, deny that to Trump. Vote for Kasich in Ohio, deny that to Trump. Because if Trump wins both those, the theory is it's over. And then vote for Cruz. Here's the next bite. We keep rolling right through them here.
This is an individual who mocked a disabled reporter, who attributed a reporter's questions to her menstrual cycle, who mocked a brilliant rival who happened to be a woman due to her appearance, who bragged about his marital affairs, and who laces his public speeches with vulgarity. There's a dark irony in his boasts of his sexual exploits during the Vietnam War, while at the same time, John McCain, whom he has mocked, was imprisoned and tortured. Dishonesty is Donald Trump's hallmark. He's not of the temperament of the kind of stable, thoughtful person we need as leader. His imagination must not be married to real power.
That was a primary point that Romney made. He only stated it one time. It was thematic. That this guy imagines himself to be Zeus. He imagines himself to be the greatest guy that there's ever been. We can't let a guy like that have power. We can't let a guy that thinks that he's God's gift to humanity with power. My God, that would be horrible. Nowhere was this kind of talk heard. In the Democratic campaign against Barack Hussein Obama. I don't know. See, it's a good thing. You wonder why the people I talk to on the other side of glass, you can't hear them, is they don't have microphones because, Rush, why don't you ask Romney? Why don't you ask, has Trump ever put his dog on the roof of the car on a vacation? I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to go there. He talked about Trump's taxes. He talked about bombshells in Trump's tax return that maybe he hasn't given a lot of money to the vets. And maybe there hasn't been a lot of charitable donations. And maybe he's not as rich as he brags to be. And then Romney talked about the New York Times tape, that there's probably bombshells in the New York Times tape, which we told you about yesterday. The meeting he had with the editorial board, which was off the record. But everybody's demanding the Times release it. The Times says they're not going to. In fact, the editor of the New York Times, Dean Baquet, says, you guys, I only showed up to watch the show. There's nothing in there. We have those sound bites coming up. Here's the final bite for Romney.
The audio and video of the infamous Tapper-Trump exchange on the Ku Klux Klan will play 100,000 times on cable and who knows how many million times on social media. We will only really know if he's a real deal or a phony if he releases his tax returns and the tape of his interview with the New York Times. I predict that there are more bombshells in his tax returns. I predict that he doesn't give much, if anything, to the disabled and to our veterans. I predict that he told the New York Times that his immigration talk is just that, talk. Donald Trump is a phony, a fraud. His promises are as worthless as a degree from Trump University. He's playing the members of the American public for suckers. He gets a free ride to the White House, and all we get is a lousy hat.
There you have it. So that pretty much is the essence of what Mitt Romney had to say today. He's trying the same tax trick that Dingy Harry played on him. That's another incident that's causing people to ask, why is Romney the one bringing this up? He's got his own tax problem per se. I mean, he's got tax problem baggage because of the allegations made by Dingy Harry. Okay, now, folks, I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to blow up the programming format. We're going to take a top of the hour time out here, wrap up the hour, and we get back to the monologue section of the next hour. We're going to start with calls. People lined up to weigh in on this. I have held back on everything I think about this for a very important reason. When I say something about anything, there usually is nothing left to be said. So I have held back because I want you to be able to have a chance to weigh in on this as well. So that's coming up in the next hour. By the way, the Today Show today, Matt Lauer and Savannah Guthrie, I think they required Trump to disavow the KKK another 50 times in one interview. That is such a classic media example of how it's done. And details coming up, plus your phone calls. So be right back. So you think this was done on behalf of Rubio? You think they sent Romney out there on behalf of Rubio? And this is making you want Trump even more because you're so ticked off at what they're... That's probably going to be a pretty common reaction here. The Trumpists out there are going to feel like the establishment's trying to manipulate them, sucker them, and they're just going to dig in deeper. That's why I said, when I opened the program, I cannot believe they still do not get what's happening out there. By that I mean the establishment Republicans in Washington. And maybe everybody, establishment Democrats, too. Anyway, great to have you back here, folks. Rush Limbaugh and the EIB Network. Telephone number 800-282-2882 if you want to be on the program. And as I said, we're going to start with phones here. We're going to go to Kathy in Sun City, Arizona, because people are lined up and loaded for bear on this. Kathy, I'm glad you called. It's great to have you here. Hello.
Well, thank you so much, and I'm really honored to be on your show.
Well, I'd say this is a special day because we never take calls in the monologue section. So you people on the phone, you really, really rate today.
Okay, well, I'm probably going to go on a roll, okay?
Yeah.
I am absolutely livid by the Romney speech. His condescending. He sounded like a frickin' Democrat the whole time. And first off, I'm a Cruz supporter. I support Cruz. But I will, if he does not get the nomination, I will support Romney. I am so sick and tired to be lied to. The establishment said, we have to have the House in 2010 to fight Obama. We gave it to them. We have to have the Senate in 2014 to fight Obama. We gave it to them. And what did they do? Absolutely nothing. They've done nothing but lie. They support the Dems. They support Obama. Romney wouldn't even fight Obama when he was debating him in the debates on Benghazi. For crying out loud. We've got people dying in Benghazi because of Obama and Hillary, and Romney didn't do a damn thing about it. And then we've got Rubio and McCain with the Gang of Eight betraying we the people. Now Rubio's attacking the ICE and the Border Patrol agents as liars. Then you jump on the KKK, and he's talking to Trump that he won't denounce KKK, which he has over and over and over. Why isn't Romney talking about the Democrats formed the KKK? Why doesn't Romney talk about, and the establishment talk about Byrd and McGovern and all the policies of the Democrats where they've just decimated the black community? I'm just absolutely livid. I'm tired of being attacked. I'm tired of being lied to. They have absolutely no integrity at all. No honor, no integrity. They demand Trump to sign the agreement not to run third party. And what are they doing? Now they're threatening to possibly bring Romney up for a third party, if that's the rumors true. And they slam Trump every 5 seconds. It's like, if they don't want their cake and they don't want us to toe the line and put I'm just so upset. But anyhow,
look, I know how you feel. They tried beating Trump. They tried it with Jeb, and they've tried it with Christie, and they've tried it with Lynn, and they haven't failed. So now they're out there making speeches, and the air and the attitude of the speech is, hey, you idiots, you may not know how dangerous this guy is, but I'm here, we of the establishment, we are here to tell you what a big mistake you're about to make. And you hear it that way, and you feel condescended to.
Well, also, they're lying to us about the unemployment. You know, Trump's talking about bringing jobs and bringing the wages back up by getting the illegals out of this country. They're the ones who are bringing the jobs, but all the establishment Republicans, they live in their cushy little houses back in Washington, D.C. They don't have to worry about any of this. My gosh, they don't even work a 40-hour week. It's just frustrating, and I'm just tired of it. And for Romney to come out a loser, and then you've got McCain will come out, he's a loser, you know, and they don't push, they say they're conservatives. That's what's so frustrating, too. They run and say they're conservatives, and they do absolutely nothing. Look at the Paul Ryan budget. Oh, my gosh, they just they don't care. It's all about themselves and their money and their money and their power, and then we're supposed to work like slaves, get taxed to heck, and just come begging for the crumbs that they give us. Well, once you start accepting government handouts, you are now a slave to the government, period.
For those of you in the establishment listening to this, I want to remind you one. Nobody had to tell her what she thinks. She thinks that, obviously, and feels what she feels on her own. This is not the product of listening to the radio. It's not the product of propaganda that's persuaded her. This is what Kathy, independent of anybody else, simply because of what she's able to see, remember, observe, this is what she thinks. It's real, is my point.
Right, and I'm 58 years old, and I love this country, and I've seen this country just fall, and it is so frustrating. And I worry about my children and my grandchildren. It really bothers me.
Okay, I have to ask you one question, Kathy. You mentioned in all of this that you are a Cruz supporter.
Yes.
Now, what if Romney's speech would damage Trump? Would that not benefit you in your quest to have Cruz elected?
Well, I would suppose yes, but like I said, if Cruz, for some reason, had to drop out before the Arizona primary, March 22nd, which I don't think he is, I would support Trump. I absolutely will not support Rubio, Kasich. Cruz and Trump are the only two. And the reason for Cruz is because he's doing just what Trump is doing, maybe not so boisterous, but he has fought the establishment. He has called Mitch McConnell out as a liar because he is. He called Boehner out as a liar because he is. And yeah, I'll call them liars because that's what they are. They lie about everything. They tell Obama, we're not going to fight you, we're not going to fight you. So Obama does whatever, Constitution, he's shredding it every day, and they've done nothing.
Exactly. They've done nothing to stop it, and then they come out and act like the problem is in their own party, but not them. It's Trump, or it's Cruz, or whatever. And I hear what you're saying. You're a Cruz supporter, but you don't want your fallback is Trump, and you don't want them succeeding in destroying the only two candidates you see with a legitimate chance to stop the direction we're headed.
Exactly, because they're the only ones who are going to call Hillary out. Where's the Republican Party calling out Hillary Clinton? They're responsible for the deaths of 4 Marines, 4 brave people in Benghazi, the crisis in Libya, the disaster of Syria, the ISIS. And then here in Arizona, we've got McCain running ads, protect you from ISIS. Well, hello, McCain. ISIS is coming across the Arizona southern border, and you've done absolutely nothing that you promised to do for 6 years to shut the border down, and you've done nothing. In fact, you did the opposite and became Gang of 8. It's just frustrating. the lying, the lying, the lying. And we see it, and we're awake. And we, the people, have had it, and we, the people, are going to fight, and we're going to take back our country.
Kathy, you have done just a fabulous job of appearing as a caller in the monologue segment of the program. It's not very many people who can carry that load, but you have done so, and you've done so phenomenally well. I would like to offer you I don't want to call it a prize, a gift. If you would like it, you don't have to take it. You don't have to act. If you don't want one, don't feel obligated. But I've got an iPad Pro here. If you don't want it for yourself, you can give it to somebody. If you know somebody who wants it. But I would love to give you something here because you've been so good. You didn't stumble. You didn't stutter. Obviously, you're speaking from your heart with profound passion. It was great.
Well, I really thank you, but I would rather you give, since you support the military so much and the fallen officers, because my husband's retired PD, I would rather have you give it to one of the families in need, the Fisher House families or one of the military families or something like that, because I really don't need it. And I would rather you do something, give it to something like that. That's awesome. That is so touching, and you can be guaranteed that I will. Okay. And I'll do it in your name. Named Kathy from Sun City, Arizona. I appreciate that. Thank you so much, Kathy. Well done. Superb. Steve in Temecula, California, you're up. Great to have you on the program. Hello.
Hi, Russ. Pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you, sir.
I just got a quick reaction. I heard part of Mitt's speech on the way into work this morning, and it made me mad because I heard him say, "We understand your anger." And the implied message in that is, we understand your anger, but you're just going to have to get over it. And I got a little message from Mitt. The Republican electorate is not a bunch of completely ignorant fools. We know who Donald Trump is, and we're going to use Donald Trump to either take over the GOP or blow it up. And we understand, Mitt, that might make you a little angry, but you're just going to have to get over it.
You mean to say that you understand Trump's flaws. You understand he's not perfect. You understand the contradictions and maybe some of the hypocrisy, but so what? Because it's bigger than Trump. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. And what the establishment should understand is that when you set everything up so that you get everything and leave the bill for somebody else, finally you leave them with nothing to lose.
Well, you realize there's some Republicans out there, and I hope to hear from them, some who think Romney's speech was great. There's some Republicans that think Trump is an absolute disaster, that we're guaranteed to lose, and we're going to lose 25 years now. We're going to have Supreme Court be total lib and everything. You've got Republicans. Not every Republican is of a frame of mind that you and our first caller, Kathy, are. Many of you are, but it's still a fractured party.
Well, it may be a fractured party, but the fracture is between the Republican electorate and the GOP establishment. And it was only within about the last year, after being a Republican for decades, that I finally realized, and, I feel stupid for not figuring it out sooner, that these people don't really want the same things I want.
I know what you mean, not having figured it out sooner. But it can't be blamed. They're Republicans. They campaign as though we're all on the same team. They campaign using your language. They get your support, claiming that they're going to actually implement your interests and represent you. It just doesn't happen very much.
Exactly. And if they were serious about wanting to stop Donald Trump, all they got to do is go to Kasich and Rubio and tell them, "Hey guys, pull out. We're going to unify behind Cruz." But they won't do that. You know why? Because then they would have to give up their agenda. They understand you're angry, but they want you to give up your agenda.
Let me jump. That is actually a profound point. If you look at the delegate count, we went through this a little bit today, but Cruz is, for all the talk of Trump having swept the field, and he has, Trump only leads Cruz by 100 or so delegates. It's 336 to 220, something like that. It is not an overwhelming lead. And I know Trumpists don't like to hear this, but it's still relevant. If you look at the vote in the Republican primaries that Trump is getting, and it's large, 35%, it still means that there are more Republicans voting for other candidates who are not Trump. And if you add them together, it's a greater number than Trump supporters are. Now, don't think the establishment doesn't see that, too. The establishment says they're telling themselves that there is more anti-Trump support in the Republican Party. They want it to coalesce. But what they forget to calculate is exactly what old Steve here pointed out. You cannot include the Cruz vote in the anti-Trump vote. Well, most Cruz people will tell you they don't like Trump and they wouldn't vote for him. But I think at the end of the day, I think they will, because there is a strain of commonality. I guarantee you the Cruz people aren't going Rubio, and the Cruz people are not going to go Kasich, and Carson has effectively pulled himself out. So the establishment and their hope to coalesce all the anti-Trump support has a lot of holes in it. And if they would try to coalesce behind Cruz instead of Rubio, they would have a much better chance of stopping Trump, but they won't do it. And Steve is right. The reason they won't do it, and we have stated it before on this program, they have maybe more fear of Cruz than they do Trump. They're angrier at Trump, but they might fear Cruz a little bit more because he is a known quantity. And they know that they're not going to be able to bully or muscle or finesse or any other tactic they might use, talk Cruz out of what he believes. So they're kind of caught. They're kind of caught. If they don't want Trump, there is a way, but they don't want that way. So now they are reduced to, first it was supporting Jeb, who never had more than 5 points in the polls. Now they're trying to coalesce behind Rubio, who hasn't won but one state, Minnesota, which is kind of an oddity, and is down by 20 in his own state of Florida. It looks hopeless for him. The evidence is all around them that the direction they want to go is nowhere near the majority of the party. And see, they know that. Folks, when you boil it all down, it's the same thing that Democrats know. You know, I state here that liberal Democrats are a minority in this country, but yet we're being governed by them. We're being governed by a real minority. And the Republican establishment, same thing. The Republican establishment way of thinking is actually a minority of thought within the party. And they don't want to ever put that to a vote. They would end up losing the vote. That's what this is really all about. That's why they're trying to thwart the vote, per se. Because they are in the minority, but they control all the levers, just as Obama and the Democrats do. And don't think that your average Republican voter doesn't instinctively know that. Your average Republican voter knows that he is in the majority of the way most people in this country think. They know. The average Republican voter knows that all of these political forces are arrayed against them by people who really represent a numerical minority. And that just adds to the frustration. That's not how it's supposed to work. This is a democracy, representative republic, what have you. So that just adds to the frustration as well. Back after this, folks. And here's Beth in Santa Ana, California. Head back to the phones. Thank you for calling. Nice to have you here.
Oh, it's a blessing to be with you, Rush. It's so wonderful to speak with you.
Thank you.
Kathy, before you, just articulated basically everything I wanted to say, except she's mad and I'm just about on the verge of tears. I do not see any dignity or honor in any of these men. What on earth are they thinking that all we want to hear is them insult each other? I mean, it's so childlike and ridiculous. I'm just so mad. This country is hanging by a thread, and it's like P.T. Barnum's circus. I just don't.
Beth, let me tell you what you're hearing.
Men are thinking of.
You are listening, in the case of Romney or anybody else that would go out, you are listening to abject personal fear.
At our expense.
Well,
what about this country?
That's what I mean. They're worried about losing what they've got. They're worried about losing their power or their positions or whatever else. You are focused on saving the country. They don't think the country's in crisis, Beth. This is the thing that they still don't. They don't think there's a crisis. Obama's just the latest Democrat in a long line of Democrats. There's nothing specifically dangerous going on out there. It's just we want to win because it's our turn to get back in power. But you people that think Obama's posing great threat to come on, grow up. You're a bunch of kooks. That's what they think.
Oh, that breaks my heart. It just breaks my heart in two.
They don't think it's a crisis. This is the thing that has always, and there are many of these things that have amazed me, but that one, there's nothing particularly different here. Obama, LBJ, JFK, Bill Clinton is just another Democrat that we've got to beat. And they don't see any crisis at all. We are going to get back to your calls in just a minute here, but I want to play for you a soundbite from Tom Brokaw, formerly of the NBC Nightway News. He was on the NBC Nightway News last night in a special segment, a special correspondent. And I want you to listen to what he says. I guess it was a commentary. And remember, Romney went out today and warned everybody of who? Barry Goldwater. Now, remember, the Republican establishment, when they think conservative, they think landslide, humiliating defeat, 1964 Barry Goldwater. They do not think what that wrought. They do not think Ronald Reagan, time for choosing, the beginning of the Reaganism movement, which led to Reagan winning 2 landslides in 1980 and the Republicans being viable in California and having massive success with policy implementation, economic, foreign policy. The Soviet Union imploded, the Berlin Wall came down, just magical stuff. And they do not go there. They go back to Goldwater. And so to them, they're trying to scare Trump supporters into abandoning him because we're just headed for a landslide defeat like 1964. And so's Tom Brokaw. Listen.
We've been here before. In 1964, the Republican establishment tried to keep Barry Goldwater from the Republican presidential nomination. They failed, and then he lost massively to LBJ in the 64 election. 4 years later, Richard Nixon made his famous comeback. So you never know with politics.
Right. Well, hey, just don't throw that off there. 4 years later, Richard Nixon made his massive comeback. The reason is that 1964 started something. They look at it as a landslide defeat, but 1964 started something, and that something is still alive and thriving and well. And I'm a proud member of it, and so are you. 1964 was when conservatism officially planted itself in the Republican Party. And it grew and grew and grew. And it is defeated when the Democrats and the Republicans together unite against conservative candidates. Now, this is not to say that Trump is a Goldwater conservative or a Reagan conservative, but he represents the same thing Goldwater did. A fringe outsider, not one of us. Can't let this guy win. They were happy Goldwater lost in a landslide. That's the dichotomy here. They think back to it and they shudder. Oh, my God, we don't want to go through that again. But they loved it. They loved conservatism getting cream back in 64. But all it was the first step in a massive growth of a movement rooted in the founding of the United States of America, planting a flag and taking a foothold in the Republican Party. Now, you go back. You can find Democrats, and they're out there talking today. You can find Democrats who were campaigning for Jimmy Carter in 1980. You can find Democrat consultants, and they are very honest today. They will tell you that the happiest day of their life was when the Republicans nominated Reagan. They thought, nobody's going to elect this guy. A doddering old fool actor, a B actor at that. He acted with chimpanzees. This is who the Republicans have nominated. And they didn't take him seriously. They thought it was the easiest campaign of their lives. Jimmy Carter running for re-election. And before the polls had even closed in California on election night, 1980, Reagan had won and was declared a landslide winner. And those Democrats who will openly admit what they thought of Reagan back then, they're talking today because they're putting in context of the now, and they are drawing parallels. They're saying, I remember what I thought about Reagan. I thought Reagan was a doddering old idiot, slobbering old fool, a gummer, a B actor with chimpanzees, no chance. And I'm thinking of Trump the same way. They'll tell you this. I said one of them was quoted on Fox this morning, and I'm thinking of Trump the same way. But they're having second thoughts now. They're not confident, in other words, of their view that Trump is some aberration, oddball, weirdo that's going to get skunked in the general. They're worried it's going to be just the exact opposite. You get them to be honest with you when there aren't any other Democrats around to spank them, and they'll tell you they're worried sick that Hillary can't beat this back. That's what they really think. And Tom Brokaw, well, we've been here before. 1964, Republican establishment tried to keep her cold water. The frame of reference is amazing. Tony in Denver, you're next. It's great to have you on the EIB network. Hello.
Hey, so if they succeed in destroying Trump, then they're going to turn right around and have to do the same thing to Cruz, right?
Bingo! Bingo! You got it. Exactly. That would be the next phase. If they were able to do any damage to Trump, they would then set their eyes. They may set their eyes on Cruz anyway. I would, in fact, tell you that they have already been targeting Cruz. Subtly, they haven't gone after Cruz yet the way they did Trump. But no, you're exactly right. Bottom line, you're exactly right. Trump would be the next, Cruz would be the next target.
So then my question is, what happens if Trump and or Cruz survives and they try to hijack the convention? What do we do? It seems hopeless.
Well, let's walk through that. What would hijacking the convention mean? There's only one way it could happen. Well, look, let's pretend everybody plays by the rules. There's only one way it could happen, and that would be if Trump nor Cruz gets 1,237 delegates. The way the thing is structured, whoever wins the delegates, those delegates are, during the primaries, during these elections, those delegates are pledged to that candidate on the first ballot at the convention. So if Trump gets 1,237, by convention and party rule, those delegates have to vote for Trump. Now, what you're suggesting is, well, the establishment may screw that. They'll get backroom meetings with some of these delegates and offer them who knows what, or threaten them or blackmail them or whatever, get them to abandon Trump. In other words, break the rules. If anything like that is tried, you know what will happen, Tony?
No.
Trump will lead a walkout of all of his delegates, and let's just pretend here. I'm not predicting. I'm constructing a hypothetical to answer his question. Let's say Trump shows up with 1,100 delegates in Cleveland. Let's say whatever happens here, he doesn't get the 1,237. And then they make a move here. After the first ballot, Tony, it's wide open. Anybody can vote for anybody after that. The first ballot is the only ballot where they're pledged to vote for whoever won their delegates in the state primaries. Trump would lead a walkout if they attempt to deny his voters the chance to vote for him, his delegates. Can you imagine 1,000, 1,100 people walking out of there in protest? It would be, it would not work. The establishment wouldn't win anything. They wouldn't end up winning the White House with this. They would cause Republicans to either go vote for Hillary or stay home or what have you. There's no way a Republican establishment candidate will be elected president if they try this. Now, you're probably going to come back and say, well, they don't care about that. They don't want Trump to become president, or they don't want
exactly.
Cruz
That's what I would say.
Yeah.
They win either way.
Well, yeah. So you're worried that if they try these games that we're kind of stuck and have no recourse. if the people that run the convention decide to make their own rules as they go and deny what the voters expressed in the primaries, right?
Right.
I think if something like that happens, the sentiment, the will of the people, because it will have spoken in volumes by then, those would be very dicey times for the establishment. That would be more than just making sure that Cruz or Trump didn't get the nomination. That could actually end up being the end of them as well, because it might be the end of the party. Because everybody's going to be reminding them, hey, you're the guys. And folks, this is a salient point. Now remember, every 4 years, when they nominate McCain, what do they tell us? We must unify. They come to us and they tell us it's up to us to be good losers. Our guy didn't win, but we must, for the sake of party unity and for dealing with the Democrats, we must come together. We must unify. We must support the establishment candidate. Notice now, when the situation might be reversed, there's no talk of them biting the bullet and unifying around a candidate that's not theirs. That ends up being a one-way street, and people are going to remind them of that. Hey, you guys remember all those last elections, McCain and then Romney, and we knew we didn't have a prayer of winning, and you told us we had to unify behind your candidate, and we did for the sake of party unity. Well, shoes on the other foot, your turn. That will be thrown at them. The media would love this, by the way. The media would love this kind of convention disorder thrown into what would be called brokered or backroom deals or what have you. But not being able to predict the future, I don't know. I think everything is set to backfire on the establishment this year. So far it has. Time will tell. It's an interesting question. Have to take a break. Back with more after this. You know, this is almost playing out like a comedy show script. A press release from McCain.Senate.gov, Washington, D.C. U.S. Senator John McCain, R. Arizona, Chairman, Senate Armed Services Committee, released the following statement today on the state of the Republican presidential primary campaign. I share the concerns about Trump that my friend, your former nominee, Mitt Romney, described in his speech today. I would echo. There are many concerns that Trump's uninformed, indeed dangerous statements on national security issues have been raised. But I hate Trump. I join Mitt. So the official statement from McCain joining our two most recent defeated Republican presidential candidate. And this afternoon, Trenton, New Jersey, Governor Chris Christie held a press conference and said this about his endorsement of Donald Trump.
I am not a full-time surrogate for Donald Trump. I don't have a title or a position in the Trump campaign. I am an endorser of Donald Trump. I went out on the road on Friday and Saturday with him to announce and reinforce that endorsement. And then I went out on Super Tuesday with him to emphasize that endorsement. I got back to the state yesterday. I'm going to be in the state for the rest of the week and through the weekend. I have no current plans to go back out on the road with him again, but I will at some point, I'm sure, do so.
Translation, no more hostage video placement for me. I'm not going to be allowed to look like a cigar store Indian ever again. This comes on the heels of these 6 New Jersey newspapers demanding that Christie quit because he's on the campaign trail with Trump. He's not serving out the end of his term. He's term limited, of course. So, obviously, a little defensiveness about what happened the other night at Mar-a-Lago. Yeah, I endorse Trump. Yeah, for sure. And but I'm not a surrogate. I'm not going to be down there. I'm not going to be gazing with longing eyes like I'm in love with a guy standing behind him on a stage anymore. I'm not going to be doing that. What are you, a union guy or something? Leave me alone. So McCain has joined Romney, and Christie has assured everybody he's still governor and is not a surrogate. And back to the phones. John San Diego, you're next on the EIB network. Hello, sir.
Thanks for taking my call. Yeah, Kathy, she set the bar pretty high. I hope I can achieve that.
Oh, I'm sure you can, because I'm sure that...
I'm a recently converted Trumpite. I said a few months back I'd vote for Hillary over Trump, but I changed my mind within the last week, and I'll tell you why. It has to do with the Chi-Coms warning us American voters to get our minds right. And when I heard that, I thought to myself, oh, really? And it's funny how within the week, we got Romney coming out, we got McCain coming out, we got all these people going to come out of the woodwork attacking Trump. And I'm thinking to myself, well, you know what? I'm going to vote for Trump. And I think what the establishment wants is Trump to go third party, a la Ross Perot. And then that'll split the vote and Hillary gets in.
Well, let me ask you something here, John. You said that you have become a Trumpist by abandoning Hillary?
Trumpite. Yeah, I'm new to the cause because I said I was going to vote for Hillary over Trump. No way I'd vote for Trump. I'm a Cruz supporter. Deep down, but it's they want to do the Ross Perot deal where it splits the vote. Trump gets to go third party because the establishment is attacking him, so he can lose his contract.
So you think that they are abandoning their pledge to support the nominee if it's Trump, and that hopefully then would force Trump to go third party?
Yeah, I thought it was written down on paper and they signed it. Maybe he could take him to court. Trump could take him to court for, violating the contract.
Trump takes people to court for drinking water the wrong way, so it doesn't need to be written down.
Yeah, so I think he could just, hey, the agreement's null and void. I'm going to go third party, take my delegates or do whatever, and that's what they're hoping for.
I don't think that's what's going to... Trump, I think, is smart enough to know third party is not going to win anything. I don't think that what's Trump is what is going to motivate Trump now. I do think. Did you hear Trump at the press conference on Tuesday night? He was talking about Republican unity. He was talking about growing the party. That's the last thing the party wants. And I think, given all this stuff going down today, I think the last thing Trump would do is go third party. I think he's going to be totally invested in taking over the Republican Party after this. I wouldn't be surprised if that's the... It is the fastest 3 hours in media. The Rush Limbaugh program, 2 of them are in the can on the way over already to the Limbaugh Broadcast Museum at rushlimbaugh.com. We have a brief timeout. Right back at it before you know it. No, I don't know what Trump's going to say. Respond to this. Trump is, the debate tonight is in Detroit. Trump's in Portland, Maine. He's about to come out and do an appearance in Portland, Maine. So he'll have to do his appearance there, wrap up, and hop back on Trump 1 and head to Detroit. I don't know. What can he say? I'm the same guy, and Mitt Romney loved and adored and appreciated 4 years ago. I'm the same guy. I haven't changed. They have, whatever. I don't know if he's going to come back and fire both barrels like he's normally known for here. And the reason I say that is because of the different attitude that he adopted after the Tuesday night press conference, which everybody remarked upon as, wow, it's really a serious presidential temperament and behavior and so forth. So our microphones are in Portland, Maine, and if it looks interesting, we might jip a little bit of it. In the meantime, we have some audio sound bites here I want to hit. 800-282-2882 for when we go back to the phones. Last night on Special Report with Brett Baer, during the All-Star panel, One of the All-Stars, one of the Fox All-Stars last night was Jonah Goldberg of National Review. He's one of the senior editors. And they were talking about what's going on here in the Republican Party and trying to figure out how this all happened. How did this guy Trump come from nowhere? Why has Trump got so much support? What in the world's going on? Brett Baer said to Jonah Goldberg, Ted Cruz says that he had to consolidate his support before he could take on Trump. That's why he delayed taking on Trump. Jonah, what do you think about what Cruz said there?
It's a theory. Look, I mean, at the end of the day, the amount of blame to be distributed across the landscape, from the mainstream media to various people in talk radio to the Republican establishment and the counter-establishment, you'd have to set up FEMA tents to distribute all of the blame that deserves to go around. And Ted Cruz certainly deserves some. And he picked a strategy that backfired on him because he did not expect that Donald Trump would eat so much of his base, which is a lot of what we saw on Super Tuesday.
The question there was, why didn't Cruz start firing back at Trump sooner? Why didn't Rubio? And I've already explained that. Everybody in the Republican race thought Trump was going to bomb out at some point. They thought one of three things. Trump's going to quit. He's going to have had his thrills and go. He's going to say something so over the top that he's going to have to resign in embarrassment. Or his people are just going to abandon him. And whatever the reason, neither Cruz nor Rubio nor anybody else wanted to tick off Trump supporters because they wanted them when Trump left the campaign. That's why they go after Trump. And there's another reason, too. You go after Trump, he comes after you. And I think that might have been a factor. So Mr. Goldberg here is casting a wide net for blame, essentially. Why did Trump happen? Who's responsible for it? And he goes through the whole gamut. Various people in talk radio, the mainstream media, Republican establishment, counter-establishment. You need FEMA tents to be able to handle all the people blamed for this whole circumstance. I have to remind everybody, there are a lot of us here that are not surprised. If it wasn't Trump, it was going to be something. You cannot have two landslide elections, 2010, 2014, midterm elections, where the Republican base gives the Republicans the Senate, gives them the House, and nothing changes, nothing happens. I mean, if the Republican Party itself brought this on. The Republican Party itself set the table, established the circumstances where an outsider, be it Cruz or Trump, was going to come in and captivate the imagination of voters because the Republican Party had let them down. Okay, let's jip Trump. Trump just started in Portland, Maine. Let's see what he does, if anything, with Romney.
Let's do a little bit of a thing called a debate. All right, get him out, please. Get him out.
Trump people going nuts here. They just threw out a protester.
What are they doing, right? What's the purpose? What are they doing? Well, he gets a little television time, I guess. But, you know, I was going to the debate, and I was going directly in from Florida. I'm down in Florida. We're campaigning. We're doing really well in Florida. We're campaigning against a guy that has the worst voting record in the history of the state of Florida, named Rubio. I call him lightweight. He's a lightweight. But got the worst record in the history of Florida, so I don't know. I should do well there. Let's hope I do well there. I love Florida. But I was going to Detroit, and I said to my people, I have to stop in Maine. I just had to stop in Maine. So I wouldn't say that it's a very direct route, would you say? Instead of going this way, I went this way, and that is good. I'm so glad. And, you know, to put this incredible sold-out crowd, and you have thousands of people outside, to put this crowd together in a period of, 24 hours? Is pretty amazing. And Maine is amazing. You know, Maine is one of the most beautiful places on earth. And people don't realize how large your land mass is. I was talking to Paul. as large as all of New England.
No.
When you think
turn Trump down this way. He knows everybody's waiting to hear what he says about Romney. Just stringing everybody along here. This is smart showmanship. Just hang in there, folks.
With great interest as we get to, go down the line. We've had some amazing results. And right nearby with New Hampshire, it was an amazing, incredible thing. And by the way, every single time I went to New Hampshire, whenever I met with people, they'd always say, number one problem, heroin. Number one problem. And I'd say, how's that possible? You look at these beautiful fields and the beautiful little roads and everything's so beautiful. And it was the number one problem. And it comes from our southern border. And we're going to close up that border. And we're going to build a wall. And we're going to stop the drugs from coming in. Believe me. We're going to stop. And people are going to come into our country, but they're going to come in legally. They're going to come in legally. But we're going to solve the problem. But, I watched these pundits. And when I first started, my wife Melania and I, we came down the escalator, right? And I first started. And it was an amazing thing. I said, we have to do something because we have people that don't know what they're doing. They don't know what they're doing in running our country. And I got some of that today, just in hearing some of these things. But they don't know what they're doing. We have to do it. And it takes guts to run for president. I'm not a politician. All talk, no action, nothing gets done. And anyway, we're coming down, and I said to myself, there's so many things. And then I watched the pundits, and they said, oh, Trump, I don't know. We have some great talent running. And I'm trying to figure out where, what's the talent? But, you come down and you do it and you start talking about trade and you see what happens with trade. Trade has been such a disaster. But the pundits all said, I came out at 3%, first one. And my wife said, if you run, you're going to win. But you actually have to run. You can't say you're going to run because they won't poll it. But even if they do poll it, people still say you're not going to run. She said, but if you run, you're going to win. I said, oh, she's my pollster. I paid her less money, but she's better than the pollster. So you know what happened? I started at 3 the first day or something. I was at 3, which I wasn't exactly thrilled about. Then it went up to 6. It went up to 12. It went up to 18. And then it kept going up. And every time I went up, the pundits would say, he's plateaued. Plateaued. Well, he's always going to get 6. That's a 6 solid group. Then I went up to 12. Well, that's a solid group. Then I went up to 24. And he said, and don't forget, that's with 17 people. We had 17 people. That's a lot. 24 with 17 people is pretty good. So we went up to 24. And they said, well, that's the max. There can't be any more. Then we went up to 28, 32. So CNN just came out with a poll. Trump, 49. National. That's high. And, I'm very proud of it because this is not a plateau. This is a movement. We have a movement going on, folks. Time magazine did a story recently, a couple of weeks ago, talking about what's going on, and they've never seen anything like it. People have never seen anything. They say, actually, and I don't think I'm exaggerating this at all, and I don't want to exaggerate, but many of the great writers, of which there are very few, because the media is among the most dishonest people I've ever dealt with, but they said that in the history of this country, there's never been anything like this, what's happening. We were in Huntsville, Alabama the other day. We had 35,000 people. 35,000 people. We went to Arkansas, which you saw we won. Oh, is that another one? Oh, yeah. All right, get them out. Get them out. They just don't stop. All right, get them out. Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Terrible. Incredible.
Another protester.
You can be nice. But if you're nice, they'll say, oh, you were so soft. Then you can be vicious. Get out of here, right? And then they'll say you were too harsh. So I've developed a nice, all right, please get them out.
And they're being thrown out.
I love you too. And by the way, I'm self-funding my campaign. I'm putting up all my money. I'm not, but you have to do all I want. I don't want your money. I just want one thing. You vote on Saturday. Get out and vote.
Get out of here.
Don't forget, I did that big, long turn. Slightly long. It did a big turn. So you can get out to vote, okay? That's the least you can.
He went really out of his way to get to Maine, so they should vote for it.
Thank you very much. So, our country and our theme is Make America Great Again. And over the last little while, I've met so many people, thousands and thousands and thousands of people. We have like this. Now, we're only confined by the size of the room. This is packed, but this is the size of the room.
He's got about 4 minutes to get to Romney, and we got to bump out here, folks. So just letting you know in advance.
I have more confidence in this country now than I've ever had before. I have seen, millions of people, really, because when you get 35, 40,000 people for rallies, and we have by far the biggest rallies, I will say that. And Bernie is second. He's second, but he's a distant second. But he is second. I have to give him credit for that. But we have by far the biggest, and I see by far the most people. And this country has unbelievable people that love our country. Just remember that. And I want to see the day in the not-too-distant future when Apple makes their iPhones in this country and not in China and all of these other places. Now, I heard, and I saw just a little bit of it, but I heard that Mitt Romney made a fairly long speech. And honestly, I thought I'll just address it quickly because it's irrelevant. Look. Mitt is a failed candidate. He failed. He failed horribly. The third debate. He failed badly. That was a race, I have to say, folks, that should have been won. That was a race that absolutely should have been won. And I don't know what happened to him. He disappeared. He disappeared. And I wasn't happy about it, I'll be honest, because I am not a fan of Barack Obama, and that was a race that I backed Mitt Romney. I backed him. You can see how loyal he is. He was begging for my endorsement. I could have said, Mitt, drop to your knees. He would have dropped to his knees. He was begging.
There you have it.
He was begging me. And did you see how great? He said, I'm not big like him. He's the great businessman, all that stuff. Well, since then, I've done much better. And now he tries to demean, but we'll talk about that in a second. But Mitt was thinking about running again. He ran a horrible campaign. It was a campaign that should have never been lost. You're running against a failed president. He came up with the 47%. He demeaned 47% of the people in our country, right? The famous 47%. Once that was said, I'll be honest, once that was said, a lot of people thought it was over for him. Then the last month and a half, he disappeared. And I called his people. I said, you have to do yourself a favor. Obama, say what you want. He was on Jay Leno. He was on David Letterman. He was all over the place the last 3-4 weeks. Mitt was looking for zoning for a 9-car garage or something in California, right? I said, what's he doing? Who cares about a garage? You're running for president. And Mitt was a disaster as a candidate. So what happened, and it was very strong, and I think if the press goes back, they'll see it. When I heard he was running again, and I wasn't sure I was going to be running, but I was very, very strong to Mitt and to everybody, and publicly, not to talk to him, because I didn't even want to talk to him. I was so disappointed in him, because he let us down. He let us down. You know, it's one thing you lose, and you work, and you work, and you go. He let us down. He should have won. Something happened to him. He went away. He was gone. He was horrible in the third debate. It was a horrible... Something happened. I don't know what happened. Maybe someday they'll write a book. His campaign guy was terrible, terrible. He had a terrible campaign manager who's always on television, Stuart Stevens or something. He's always on television knocking everybody. The guy ran one of the worst campaigns in the history of modern politics. And Mitt ran, probably it was the worst run that most people have seen, because most people thought that the Republican candidate would win. So when Mitt started raising his head a few months ago, I was very strong. I said, Mitt Romney should not run. He's a choke artist. And I said it very strongly. I wanted to keep him in. And then Jeb Bush actually convinced Mitt not to run. Can you imagine? Jeb sold him. Jeb, he's a good salesman. See, now that he's out, I'll say Jeb's a good salesman, right? He's a high-energy salesman. But Mitt was afraid of Jeb, because he was afraid that Jeb would get the money and Jeb would get the whatever. And, you know, I wasn't afraid. I wasn't afraid of Jeb, I can tell you that. So What happened is,
folks, I have to bump out here. We have to go to our obscene profit timeout, but we pretty much have it there. Treating the Romney speech today as an irrelevancy from somebody who has become irrelevant, and it's really not worthy of much comment. And you put him and Jeb Bush together and do high-energy salesmanship, and you lose to Democrats, and who wants any more of that? So that's pretty much the summary. He'll keep going, but we have to take a brief timeout. All right, our microphones are in Portland, Maine still. We'll go back and Jip Trump. He's now gotten back to Romney and Rubio. So here's a couple more minutes of Trump today.
The west side of Manhattan, that I built buildings all over Manhattan. He didn't mention into this that he was talking about a beef. And he talked about a water company, which, by the way, I still have. I supply all my clubs with the water. You know, numerous of those things I have, the magazine, other things. Get him out of here. Get him out. Get him out. Hey, by the way, speaking of Mexico, I won the Hispanic vote by far in Nevada, right? We won.
Must have been an Hispanic protester they just threw out
in the polls we won Nevada, we won South Carolina, we won New Hampshire. Then we had the big Tuesday where we won a tremendous number. And I have to tell you this. So ultimately, Mitt chickened out, and now he's saying, probably sees Hillary's very weak. And now he said, "Oh, I wish I went. I wish I tried it." But ultimately, he didn't, because he would have gotten beaten very badly. But I'll tell you what. A couple of things were mentioned that we have to discuss. First of all, when he talks about me, I wrote just a couple of them down. When he talks about me, they don't want to talk about 92-story buildings all over the place. They don't want to talk about the Bank of America building in San Francisco, 1290 Avenue of the Americas. They don't want to talk about the West Side Railroad Yards, where I built the city on the west side of Manhattan, a tremendous city on the west side of Manhattan. They don't want to talk about 40 Wall Street and all the buildings. They want to talk about water, which I still have. I supply all my clubs. I have a water company. They want to talk about a magazine, and I have a magazine. It goes to all my clubs. They do a little tiny thing, wherever you can find. By the way, a school, little deal, but very, I loved it when it was there. Trump, they call it Trump University, Trump Initiative. But I will tell you, just so you understand on the school had 98% approval rating. But you had an attorney that felt, maybe I can sue Trump and get something. The school had a 98%. In other words, 98% of the people that took the courses, we signed report cards. That's why you can't settle a case like that. You put somebody up in the stand. Did you write this? The most beautiful thing. They did a commercial. They took it down where two people were going and saying negative, and then we showed them the statement that they wrote. They had to take the commercial down because 98% of the people that took the courses said really wonderful things about it. The other thing's got an A from the Better Business Bureau. So I say, how do I settle a case like this? A B plus would be okay too. B plus would be okay, but we did better than a B plus. So
all right, there you have. So Donald Trump he said he's going to go through a couple of things, point by point, that Romney mentioned, and one of them obviously is businesses that have failed, and the Trump University responded to that. Now we have another EIB obscene profit timeout. Back to your phone calls when we get back, folks. Sit right where you are and stay with us. Excellence in Broadcasting Network. Happy to have you here, folks. Telephone number 800-282-2882. We are not going to go back to Donald Trump. We've got the flavor, what we wanted, how he was going to react to Mitt Romney. I'll just pass along one thing that happened during the commercial break, and it's still going on. The issue that he decided to refute Romney on was China and trade. Romney attempting to say that Trump doesn't know what he's doing in trade, would cost everybody money, China will end up winning, and Trump took it on, and the way he did it was to explain that he knows more about trade and business than Romney, and he's got a store that's worth more than Romney's worth, and nobody believed that his store on Fifth Avenue could be worth that much. 3 appraisers went in, found out it's worth 5 times what Romney's worth. Independent appraisers. Now he's describing how he bought the old post office in Washington. And it languished for 35 years, and everybody wanted to develop it. Nobody could, but he's come along and done it. Finest hotel in the world, going to open 2 years early. Did it with the GSA. The point is, he's describing this to his audience there, and he's explaining the bid process and how he did it and how he does his business. And I don't care, folks, whatever you think, Trump is explaining this to people in ways that candidates don't explain how they do what they do. That politicians don't explain how they do what they do. Trump is going rhyme and reason, verse, step by step, the bid process. Here's what I was up against. This is what I had to do. This is what I did. You can check it. You can call anybody. But the bottom line is that when it's all over, nobody doubts he knows what he's doing, is the bottom line. Nobody doubts that he's extremely competent in the way he tells the story. He brings this crowd along with him step by step. What he had to do, what other people had failed in doing. He gives them insight into how he does deals in his business. Whether it's smoke and mirrors or not is not relevant. The point is the crowd is there assembled, and people watching on TV cannot help but conclude the guy is an expert in this and does do deals that he wins. And that's how he's refuting Romney on doesn't know what he's doing in trade and dealing with China and that kind of stuff. Let's go back to the phones because people still want in on this, been waiting for a while. Jeff in Warner Robins, Georgia. Great to have you on the program, sir. Hello.
Hello, Rush. How are you today?
Just fine. Thank you, sir.
Great to talk to you. Hey, I'm a Cruz supporter, and I'm just wondering, how do you think, I think that this Romney speech is actually helpful to Trump because it just is more evidence that the establishment doesn't like him. And I wonder if you have any ideas about how Senator Cruz might be able to combat that. I have one that I'll run by you maybe and see what you think.
Well, first thing, you're right. I've every call we've had today has been of the opinion, every caller has been of the opinion that Romney did not do anything but help Trump here by either making people madder at Romney and madder at the administration and more defensive or supportive of Trump, or insult them or what have you. But we haven't taken one call from one person who thought it's about time somebody said what Romney says about it. None of that. I've been checking my email. I can't check near all of it because it's too voluminous, but throughout the everywhere I'm looking for reaction, drive-by media in various TV networks and websites, everybody thinks what you think, that this is going to get Trump an additional 4 points in the polls. Snerdley, have you seen anybody out there that thinks Romney hit a home run today? I haven't either. I haven't found one person. Now, before you tell me how you think this might help Cruz.
Oh, I don't think it'll help Cruz. I just wonder what can Cruz say? How can he react to it in order to spin it, I suppose, for lack of a better term,
well,
to limit the damage?
Cruz, the one thing that people need to know about Cruz that they don't know. Look, I could be all wet here. I think Ted Cruz was an outsider before Trump. I think Ted Cruz came along and took on the establishment before Trump did. But the problem that Cruz has, he's an elected senator. That right there says the opposite of being an outsider. Doesn't matter that he's taken him on face-to-face, floor of the Senate, Cruz versus McConnell and so forth. That happened in the daytime. I don't know how many people actually saw that later on that day or later on that week on the news. But when you get right down to it, perceptions are what they are. And Cruz is in the Senate. He is an elected Republican in the Senate. And Trump's not. Trump's got nothing to do with politics. He is genuinely, physically an outsider. Cruz is an outsider, and he has been fighting these people longer than Trump has, but he's been doing it from inside, from within. So I think what he needs to do tonight is just hype the fact that he is an outsider as well, because that's the magic here. And he's got to let it be known that even though he's in the Senate and even though he was elected and ran for office, that he has chosen to take them on face-to-face. But I think, speaking about this, he's got to branch out and use language that is not specifically tailored to movement conservatives. So I know what Cruz's election strategy is, or was, before Trump got in. And it's all rooted around the 4 to 5 million people, Republicans, who did not vote in 2012. Because I've talked to Senator Cruz about it, and he is of the belief that if those 4 to 5 million could be inspired to turn out and vote, and everything else stays the same, the Republicans could win. So he set out to get those 4 to 5 million. He is of the opinion that they are very conservative, movement conservative, even some of them evangelicals. That's why he speaks the way he does. He's speaking that language. When he talks about Obamacare, when he talks about Supreme Court, when he talks about any of these issues, he uses language that you would see any movement conservative on a conservative website use or a conservative magazine. He needs to branch out and use language that says the same thing but doesn't sound like it is movement conservative ideological. And that's what I think the challenge is his message isn't wrong. It's just he's limiting his appeal because he actually is trying to appeal to a small group of people. He's assuming that the people that voted for Romney in 12 are going to show up and vote Republican again. So they're there. The 4 to 5 million that didn't vote, that's his target. Plus, I think I heard him say once that whatever the total number of evangelicals in the country, 24, 25 million. So he's trying to talk in language that'll get to them too. But he's got to branch out because that language is limiting, and it is language that inside conservative movement people use. So I think he's got a harp on that. I think he can't let Trump own this outsider status.
Yeah. Do you think he could come back and paint Trump as my view on Trump is just because he hasn't been elected to office doesn't make him an outsider. He's been rubbing elbows with the powerful people in Washington politics for 20 or 30 years. He gives money to everyone.
No, that's not. No, he ought to not even try to take Trump voters away. That's a losing proposition. Romney proved that today. He's got to go out and get people that were going to vote for Jeb. He's got to get people that were going to vote for Rubio. He's got to get people who are going to vote for Kasich, Carson. He's got to focus on all of those Republican votes that have not voted for Trump. He doesn't need to take one vote away from Trump because that isn't going to happen. I don't think going after Trump, especially after this today, going after Trump today is going to be seen as piling on with Romney, and that's not going to do him any good. Nobody wants Romney to be joined in this.
Okay, let me ask you this one. Is this tactic, what you think if this may or may not work? Could you say that comparing Trump and Romney, other than the vast personality differences, they're both Northeastern liberals who, for most of their life, were pro-choice and pro-gun control?
No.
And I'm going
to tell you again. I'm going to tell you. You're going to lose if Trump is your target. Leave Trump alone. And not because you don't want Trump hitting you. There are many people voting in these primaries that are not voting for Trump, that are not voting for Cruz. He's got to go get them. And I don't think trying to link Romney and Trump is going to work after Trump gets through dissecting Romney today, number one. But number two, you're not going to talk Trump voters out of voting for Trump. It isn't going to happen. Now, if it sounds to me like you're more interested in Trump being discredited than you are in Cruz winning, and you might want to join the crowd that's tried that, but there hasn't been anybody succeed at it yet. I just think there are a lot of primary votes yet to be had from people who oppose Trump. He's not winning a majority of Republican votes. He's getting a majority of the media coverage. He's getting a majority of the fascination. But when you look at raw vote totals, Cruz is only 79 delegates behind him right now. So, and I'm not trying to protect Trump. I'm telling you the truth. There's no way that anybody is going to talk Trump voters out of supporting him. And there's no way. You're not going to convince a Trump voter that there's no difference in Trump and Romney. You're not going to convince a Trump voter that there's even similarity. It's a losing proposition. Even if it's true, you're not going to succeed. Trump's supporters are glued because it's about more than Trump. So the focus has to be elsewhere. This is clearly and as plainly as I can say it. And we will be back. No. Here is Tatum in Tampa. And it's great to have you, Tatum. How are you?
I'm well. I'll show my age and say dittos. And I hope that the Ted Cruz people and the Rubio people are listening to your program today. Take some advice from you.
Well,
I have a problem with the personification of Trump supporters as being angry. And I think that they're not angry. I think they're afraid. I think that they're afraid that this has gone so far, there's no turning back, and he's the only choice. And people would go to the bully when they're afraid, and they're really angry, and no one wants to say they're afraid, so they're going to say, well, I'm angry. Well, when you're angry, you take care of stuff yourself. You go out and do it. And I think Ted Cruz is the guy that's going to give us the environment to express our anger and do something about it, where if we go with the bully, we're going to continue to be afraid.
This is actually a very, very good point. I've had a lot of people get a little bit irritated over being called angry. My answer to that is it's justified. I think anger by itself is not a shortcoming. It's totally justified now. But I agree with you that there are a lot of people scared. People out of work, worried if they're going to find a job. People who have a job, worried they're going to lose it. People who have a savings account, worried that it's going to be taxed away from them, or some such thing. There is fear. There's people are scared out there, left and right. You're totally correct about that. But it's justified. It doesn't indicate any kind of a deficiency or shortcoming. I appreciate that. I'm glad you made that point, Tatum. We have to go, folks. Back to wrap it up after this. You've heard it said that Reagan went over the heads of the media to get to the American people. I would say Trump is kind of going under the media to get to them. And I will explain. No, nothing but knees. I'll explain it tomorrow. Don't go there.